I watched my son walk down the aisle from the very last row of the venue. Not the middle row. Not even the second to last.
No.
I watched him from a folding metal chair shoved behind a stack of unused floral stands, directly beside a crate labeled catering staff only. And the worst part? I wasn't supposed to be there at all. I was meant to be in the front row, right side, seat 1, the seat reserved for the mother of the groom. But instead, as guests arrived in glittering dresses and expensive suits, a wedding coordinator with an apologetic smile approached me and said, "Ma'am, the bride has made a slight adjustment. She wants all family photos to look consistent. You'll be seated in the back, near the overflow section." Overflow section? I had come early. Earlier than anyone. I helped the florist unload boxes. I brought breakfast for the bridal team. I paid for half the decorations, the venue, the lighting, the chair rental. I paid for so much I stopped keeping count. Yet somehow I was overflow. I stared at the coordinator, waiting for her to laugh and say it was a mix-up. But she didn't. She only held out a thin paper ticket between two shaking fingers. Seat 47B. No gold foil name card like the others. No ribbon. Not even a printed sticker. Just black marker on a torn-off scrap of cardstock, the kind they use to label boxes backstage. I took the ticket with numb fingers and walked down the aisle, past rows of smiling strangers wearing corsages I had paid for, past the bride's extended family sitting proudly in the front row, past my own relatives who looked away quickly because they didn't want to get involved. I kept walking, and walking, until the carpet ended, until the music softened, until the lights dimmed, and I realized my seat wasn't even in the main section. It was behind a tall arrangement of blush peonies and roses that completely blocked my view. The display was so tall, I could only see the altar if I leaned over awkwardly between the branches. My chair wobbled the moment I sat, one leg shorter than the others. It screeched every time I shifted my weight. Someone behind me whispered, "Isn't that the groom's mother?" And another answered, "I think so. Why is she sitting all the way back here?" Good question.
One I didn't have an answer to.
The music started soft, angelic, the same song I used to hum when my son was little. My eyes brimmed with tears. Not from joy, not from sentiment, but from the sharp sting of humiliation. Then, as the doors opened and the bride stepped in, radiant, glowing, deliberately performing the picture-perfect entrance she had always rehearsed, she turned just slightly, looked over her shoulder,
and saw me.
Not once did her smile falter. Instead, it sharpened, lifted, smoothed into something cold. Something victorious. As if seating me in the dark corner of her perfect day was some final move in a private battle I didn't even know we were fighting. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight, like someone was pressing fingers into the soft part where the voice hides. Then the bride's mother, dressed in shimmering champagne silk, glanced back too. Her eyes flicked to me, then away, dismissive. Her husband reached over, squeezed her hand, and whispered loud enough for the row in front of me to hear. "Don't worry. Everything looks perfect."
Perfect.
Of course it did. Their side of the family took up the entire front row, overflowing into the second. They smiled proudly, as if this day belonged solely to them. As if my son, the boy I raised through night fevers and heartbreaks and college exams, was just an accessory in their curated fairy tale. The officiant began speaking. I leaned right, then left, trying to get a glimpse of my own child. But the floral tower swallowed him completely. I could hear his voice, steady, warm, confident, but I couldn't see him. My own son, his own mother, banned from the front row, banished to the shadows. And then the knife twisted deeper. A teenage usher approached me quietly and whispered, "The bride said you may stay here for the ceremony, but please don't stand for any photos afterward. It's important to her aesthetic." Important to her aesthetic. I stared at the boy as if he were reading a script from a cruel play. He swallowed hard, embarrassed, and added. Her exact words were, "Tell her we'll handle family photos." Handle? I wasn't family. Not to them. A misty blur filled my eyes. I blinked quickly, refusing to let a single tear fall. Not here. Not in this seat. Not in front of strangers. And then, the moment that changed everything. As the bride and groom exchanged rings, I finally saw my son's face through a gap in the flowers. He looked happy, radiant,
Alive.
but when his eyes met mine,
He looked away.
too quickly, too deliberately, as if suddenly ashamed that I was there at all. My hands went cold. My skin prickled. The room felt smaller. And in that exact moment, something inside me shifted. Not snapped. Not shattered. Shifted. Like a locked door sliding open after years of rest. I sat completely still.
Composed. Silent.
But inside me, a quiet, dangerous calm settled. A woman pushed too far. A mother erased. A wallet used. A seat taken. I folded my hands neatly in my lap. And in that stillness, I whispered to myself, after this last insult, I'm done. They have no idea what's coming. Because one phone call, just one, was all it would take to end it all. The moment the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the room erupted into applause, an applause that rolled over me, but never reached me. Not really. It felt muffled, distant, like I was listening from underwater. And somehow, that made everything sharper. The scent of the room hit me first. A suffocating blend of imported white roses, eucalyptus, melting candle wax, and whatever overly sweet perfume the bride and her bridesmaids had bathed in. It clung to the air like humidity on a July afternoon, heavy and inescapable. Underneath it lingered something else. A faint chemical tang from the floor polish. The metallic bite of the air conditioner struggling against the crowd, and the warm yeasty smell drifting in from the catering door each time a waiter slipped through. Every scent layered on top of each other until my stomach churned. My chair didn't help either. The cushion was thin, and I could feel the metal bar digging into the backs of my thighs. The seat tilted slightly to one side, so I had to tense my core just to sit upright. And every time I shifted, even slightly, the old metal legs screeched against the polished wooden floor. Several guests in the row ahead of me glanced back with irritation, as if I had chosen the chair. As if I were some unruly attendee who didn't know how to sit still. I folded my hands tighter in my lap. My palms were sweaty, my fingertips cold. The skin around my nails felt tight. My heartbeat wasn't fast, it was too calm, too quiet. It thudded like a slow drum somewhere low in my chest. That was the first sign something inside me was changing. I had been humiliated before. Life has a way of doing that when you're a single mother with more bills than time. But never like this. Never so public. So intentional. So rehearsed. A waiter brushed past me, carrying a tray of champagne flutes, and the cold condensation dripped onto my shoulder. The sudden chill made me gasp softly. He didn't apologize. Just kept moving. I reached for a tissue tucked in my purse and dabbed the wet spot on my dress. The fabric, light silver satin, was one of the few luxuries I had allowed myself. A small treat for my son's big day. Now the stain spread like a bruise. The officiant's voice echoed through the hall, deep and ceremonial. Every time he paused, the silence felt glaring. The flickering candle flames reflected in the gold-trimmed mirrors, casting warm halos around the guests. Everyone looked radiant, glowing. Photoshop perfect. Except me. I felt like a misplaced prop. Forgotten. Unwanted. Tucked away in the shadow of the towering floral arch that blocked half my view. Every now and then, when a guest leaned or shifted, I caught a glimpse of the ceremony. The bride's pristine smile. Her lace veil trailing elegantly. My son, my baby, looking at her like she hung the moon. The back of my throat tightened. I tried to swallow the ache, but it sat there heavy, unmoving. The aisle runner was soft ivory velvet, and each step the bride took earlier left delicate impressions, subtle reminders of her pathway to a future where I wasn't meant to have a place. The pianist sat near the entrance, fingers sweeping effortlessly across the keys. The melody floated through the room like a spinning silk ribbon, Gentle, elegant, completely out of place with the storm building in my chest. Then the sound that always unraveled me echoed. Camera shutters.
Click, click, click.
They snapped relentlessly, capturing moments I wasn't part of. The photographer hovered near the front row, adjusting lenses, angles, lighting. I watched as she directed. Mother of the bride, lean in.
Perfect.
And you, Dad, put your arm around her. The bride's parents beamed. Then the photographer said, let's get the family shot. My chest throbbed. The bride's family rose gracefully, while I remained seated behind a forest of roses and peonies. Invisible, forgotten, unclaimed. The shadows on my skin flickered as guests moved subtly, adjusting dresses, smoothing hair, straightening ties. Their jewelry sparkled under the chandeliers, gold, diamonds, pearls. I tugged lightly at my necklace. Simple. A thin chain with a tiny heart pendant my son gave me for Mother's Day when he was 10. I had worn it every day since. Today, it felt like a weight. Not comforting. Heavy. A reminder. A memory I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. The officiant continued, and people sighed with emotion, wiping corners of eyes, whispering about how beautiful everything was. Behind their murmurs, I heard something else. A soft snicker. From the bride's cousin. Is that really where they put her? Her friend whispered back. Emily said she didn't want any distractions in the photos. Distractions. So that was what I was. I straightened my back, rolled my shoulders, forced myself to ignore the sting. But then, through the leaves of the floral tower, I saw her. The bride. Emily. Her eyes flickered to the back of the room.
To me.
Her lips curled into a subtle smile. Not a nervous smile. Not a sweet smile. A smile of someone who had gotten exactly what she wanted. A smile of someone who had won. The air in my lungs froze. Completely still. I couldn't breathe for a moment. The pianist shifted into a softer melody. The applause faded. The officiant closed his book. The ceremony had ended. The guests rose. But I stayed seated. Frozen. Listening to the rustle of clothing, the scraping of chairs, the swell of voices, the gentle clinking of champagne flutes being lifted off trays. My hands trembled. Not from fear. Not from sadness. From something deeper. Older. Rising from a place inside me I had buried long ago. I felt the heat of stage lights warming the back of my neck. The faint draft from the AC brushed across my arms, raising goosebumps. My heart beat once. Then twice.
Slow. Heavy.
Purposeful. And as guests filed out, past me, around me, oblivious to me, I knew. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Because humiliation has a scent. Sharp. Metallic. Unmistakable. And I had breathed it in long enough. I lifted my chin. Looked straight at the aisle. At the glowing arch. The bride clinging to my son's arm. The laughing family at the front. And in the middle of that glittering, perfect chaos, I finally felt something settle inside me. They think this is over. They think I'll swallow this. They think I'll disappear. Not today. Not ever again. The reception hall buzzed with excitement. Glasses clinking, laughter bubbling, music swelling, but inside my chest, everything felt painfully still. As I sat tucked behind that towering floral arrangement during the ceremony, something inside me began unraveling, but not suddenly.
No.
It had been unraveling for years. And this wedding, this seat, was simply the final tug. Because I hadn't always been the quiet, humiliated woman sitting in the back row. There was a time my presence meant something. My voice mattered. My love meant the world to someone. To my son. My only child. My entire heart wrapped in soft baby skin the day he was placed in my arms. But to understand what this day truly meant, you'd have to understand where we started. I wasn't born into comfort. Not into privilege. Not into a life where front row seats were assumed or owed. I built everything, with calloused hands and sleepless nights. When my husband died suddenly, leaving me widowed far too young, I had no roadmap, no savings, no family support with money to spare. Just grief and a baby boy with big brown eyes and colicky cries that filled the tiny apartment we lived in. I took the only job available at the time, nights at a long-term care facility. 10 hours on my feet, lifting, bathing,
Feeding.
holding frail hands that shook, listening to lonely stories from people forgotten by their families. By the time I got home at sunrise, my back screamed.
My feet ached.
Sometimes my hands trembled so much I could barely turn the key in the apartment door. But every morning, when I'd peek into his crib and see him sleeping with his tiny fists curled against his cheek, everything softened. He was my reason,
My why.
my purpose. I didn't complain, didn't ask for help,
Didn't break.
because he needed me to be unbreakable. I stopped buying new clothes. I learned to mend shoes with dental floss. I skipped meals so he never had to. Every birthday party was homemade decorations, thrift store toys, dollar store candles. But he was happy, radiantly, innocently happy. And that made it enough. When he was 5, he had a fever so high I thought the night itself might swallow us whole. I rushed him to the ER barefoot, literally barefoot because I couldn't find my shoes in the panic. I held him against my chest as he trembled and whimpered, whispering promises I wasn't sure the universe would let me keep. When he joined the school band, I worked 2 extra shifts to buy him his first instrument. When he wanted to attend the summer science camp his friends are going to, I took on housekeeping work on my off days to pay for it. When he wanted the cool sneakers all the boys in his class wore, I skipped groceries for a week. Every tear he cried was met with comfort. Every dream he dreamed was met with sacrifice. Every milestone he reached was celebrated, photographed, cherished. I didn't have much, but he had everything I could give. Everything. The first time he introduced me to Emily, she wore sharp perfume and sharper smiles. Pretty girl.
Polished.
Charming when she wanted to be. She held my son's arm like a trophy she'd won in a silent contest only she participated in. She hugged me politely, her hands barely touching my shoulders. And from the moment her eyes swept over me, my simple blouse, my modest purse, my no-frills hairstyle, I knew exactly what she saw. Someone beneath her. I tried. Lord, I tried. I gave her thoughtful gifts, asked about her job, invited her to dinners she always declined with a too-sweet laugh. Oh, maybe next time. We're just so busy. She always acted like my presence required effort, as if acknowledging me was optional. But I told myself she was young, insecure perhaps, maybe shy. So I excused it. Then came the engagement. My son called with excitement spilling through the phone. Mom, we're getting married. My heart swelled. I cried that night, happy tears, because I wanted him to have the love, stability, and partnership I'd lost too early. But the moment wedding planning began, the shift happened. I wasn't asked for my input. I was told what they'd already decided. I wasn't welcomed into the dress shopping trip. I was shown edited photos afterward. I wasn't included in vendor meetings. I was forwarded invoices. Every time I asked if I could help, "Oh, don't worry, Margaret. We've got it handled." Got it handled. Yet somehow, every other week, I was asked to contribute just a bit more. Could I cover the upgraded linens? The gold chargers? The extra string lights? The rehearsal dinner appetizer package? And I complied. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give. We support. We help build their happiness. Even if our hands shake while writing the checks. I thought my generosity would earn a little respect. But it earned me less. I remember early in the planning, asking quietly, "What seat will I be in for the ceremony?" Emily flashed her tight smile. "Oh, don't worry, Margaret. You'll be included. Included. Not honored. Not centered. Not recognized. Merely included."
She said it like a task to check off her list.
At the dress fitting, her mother made an offhand comment. Maybe we shouldn't make the photos too crowded on the groom's side. Emily had laughed. They didn't think I heard. But I did. Every slight was small, So small, you could almost convince yourself it meant nothing. But small things pile up. Grains of sand become dunes.
And dunes can bury you.
What hurt most wasn't her behavior. It was his. My son. The boy who once cried if I didn't come to tuck him in, began drifting. First, fewer calls. Then shorter conversations. Then slowly, subtly, his tone changed. When I expressed concerns about being excluded, he responded with, "Mom, please don't make a big deal out of this. Emily just wants things a certain way." A certain way. Her way.
He no longer defended me.
He explained her. At first, I blamed the wedding stress. Then I blamed myself. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I expected too much. But deep down, a truth began pressing against my ribs. A week before the wedding, the seating chart was finalized. I saw my name scribbled in the margins. Literally the margins. Everyone else had their names typed neatly, printed on elegant cardstock. Mine looked like an afterthought. Like someone remembered me at the last second. When I asked about it, the bride twirled her hair and said, "Oh, it's just temporary."
Don't worry.
Temporary for who? The guests? The photos? The narrative she was crafting? No matter how much I smiled, no matter how much I contributed, no matter how I tried to stay gracious, I became more invisible with each passing day. The ceremony wasn't just an insult. It was confirmation. Confirmation that I had been silently replaced, outshined, edited out of the story. The seat, the distance, the humiliating instructions whispered to the usher, the looks from guests, the deliberate exclusion. It all added up to one truth. They didn't want me there. Not truly. Not proudly. Not visibly. And as I sat in that crooked metal chair, hidden behind flowers and pillars, the backstory of my life played like a montage in my mind. All the nights I stayed up with him. All the meals I skipped for him. All the dreams I abandoned for him. All the love I poured into him. Only for him to look away during the most important moment of his life. Only for her to treat me like an accessory she didn't order and couldn't return. Only for her family to pretend I wasn't part of his world. Only for the world to see me as a misplaced guest in my own son's story. But here's the thing.
Pain changes you.
But humiliation? Humiliation awakens you. The reception had barely begun when the cracks in my composure started to spread. I wasn't angry.
Not yet.
Anger requires energy. What I felt was heavier, hollow, a deep, echoing emptiness that vibrated inside my chest like a struck bell. After the ceremony, guests poured into the reception hall with a flurry of excitement. Heels clicking, laughter spilling, champagne glasses chiming as waiters weaved through the crowd. I moved slowly, deliberately, following the flow of people into the hall. Not one person stopped to greet me. Not one person asked where I'd sat. It was as if the ceremony had rolled on without any awareness that the mother of the groom had been tucked away behind flowers like some unwanted decoration. The reception room was breathtaking. Soft amber lighting, cascading floral centerpieces, crystal chandeliers sparkling like frozen rain. The kind of elegance I had quietly funded with overtime shifts and canceled personal plans. I scanned the room for my assigned seat. A coordinator pointed me toward a small table tucked near the DJ booth, half hidden behind a speaker. Of course. Front row?
No.
Family table? Absolutely not. I took my seat anyway, smoothing my dress, pretending I didn't feel the vibration of bass travel up through the floor. Then I heard it. The bride's mother, Susan, her voice dripping with false sweetness. It looks exactly how Emily envisioned it, perfect. Everything is perfect. Emily nodded, beaming. They weren't wrong. Everything was perfect. Everything except me. I turned my gaze to the head table, the glowing crown jewel of the room. 8 seats. Lavish.
Sparkling.
Prominently displayed. For the bride, the groom, the bridesmaids, the groomsmen. Not one seat for the mother who raised the groom. Not one. I watched as the bride tugged my son's sleeve, leaning in to whisper something. He laughed. His eyes never searched for mine. Not once. A warmth spread through my body, but not the comforting kind. This was heat, heavy and suffocating, crawling from my stomach into my throat. My hands trembled under the table. The DJ's microphone screeched. The first announcement began. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new Mr. and Mrs. Aldrich. The room erupted. Chairs scraped. Hands clapped. People whistled. I stayed seated. The newlyweds danced in, twirling under the chandelier lights like a scene straight out of a romance film. But it wasn't romantic to me. It was a reminder. A reminder that I was watching a life unfold that no longer included me. The first speeches began. Emily's father stood, raising his glass. When our daughter Emily told us she found someone who felt like home, we were thrilled. Daniel has become a true part of our family. We are honored to call him our son. My throat tightened. Honored. Part of their family. The words were deliberate, pointed, heavy. He paused, scanning the room, and for a brief moment, his eyes lingered on me. Not with warmth, with triumph. Then Emily's mother took the stage. She patted the microphone, smiling with a polished grace that came from years of pretending to be the kindest person in the room while quietly orchestrating everyone around her. To our beautiful daughter, she began, and to Daniel, who has been the perfect addition to our family. Another pointed pause. Emily has always dreamed of a wedding that reflected her world, her vision, her future. And today that dream came true. Her future, her world. Not ours. Never ours. People cheered. Champagne flutes clinked. Laughter rose in bubbles through the air. But to me, every word felt like a needle. Sharp. Intentional. Precise. Then came the speech I had dreaded. My son stood. My son. He looked handsome. Too handsome. Like he had stepped straight out of an advertisement for tailored suits and first-class lifestyles. He cleared his throat, smiling broadly. I just want to thank everyone who helped make today possible. He thanked the vendors. He thanked the venue, the bridal party, her parents, her siblings, her extended family. He went on and on. But not once did he thank me. The woman who raised him. The woman who funded half this wedding. The woman who sat through his fevers, his heartbreaks, his catastrophes. The woman who stayed up late sewing patches on uniforms, who drove him to school in the snow, who worked 3 jobs at one point to pay rent. The woman who gave him everything. He didn't even look at me. He finished his speech with, "And finally, thank you to Emily's parents for welcoming me into your home and making me feel like your son. Your son, not mine." The applause was thunderous. Everyone stood, but I stayed seated. Hands in my lap, heart in my throat. A coldness settled over me. A coldness so quiet, so final, that I knew something had shifted. Something irreversible. I sat still, unmoving, while the chatter resumed. A bridesmaid approached the DJ booth, laughing loudly, calling it the best wedding ever. Another waiter swept past me, nearly knocking my chair. Someone bumped into my shoulder, without apologizing. The world seemed to blur at the edges. And in that blur, a single, clear thought crystallized. They have taken everything from me. And I let them. But not anymore. My fingers brushed the side of my purse. Inside it, my phone buzzed, softly, insistently. Not with calls. Not with messages. With potential. With power. I inhaled slowly, deeply, grounding myself. Then I stood. My chair screeched again, drawing a few annoyed glances. Let them look. Let them wonder. Let them assume. Because assumptions are easy to make. Until the truth hits. I stepped away from the table, weaving through the crowd with a calmness that felt unnatural. Like I was floating. No one noticed me leave. No one stopped me. They were too busy celebrating, too drunk on their own perfection to see the storm creeping toward them. I slipped into a quiet corridor, away from the pulsing music and clattering glasses. The hallway was dim, empty, humming with the soft buzz of fluorescent lights. I exhaled. And then, with a steadiness I didn't recognize. I took out my phone, scrolled to the vendor list I had saved months ago, just in case. Just in case everything went wrong. Just in case kindness was mistaken for weakness one too many times. I pressed the first number. The florist. A woman answered, cheerful,
Brisk.
hello? I spoke calmly,
Carefully.
without a tremor. Hi, this is Margaret, the mother of the groom. I'm calling to cancel tomorrow's floral arrangements for the brunch. A pause.
Oh.
Are you sure? Everything has already been prepared. Yes. I cut in gently. I'm sure. And please send the remaining balance invoice to the bride's parents. They'll be responsible from here on. I hung up before she could respond. Then I dialed the second number. The event band leader. He picked up on the second ring. Margaret. Everything all right? Yes, I said again, voice smooth as glass. There's been a change. You won't need to perform the second set tonight. We're canceling the late night segment. A confused stutter. Ma'am, are you? I'm sure, I said, ending the call. Then the final number. The catering manager. This one would hurt them the most. They had planned an extravagant cocktail hour tomorrow. I exhaled slowly. Please cancel the brunch service, I said. Charge the remaining amount to the Aldridge family. They're handling everything now. I clicked end call. Silence wrapped around me like a soft, dark blanket. No guilt, no fear, no hesitation, just peace. And a quiet, powerful realization. They had pushed me out of the front row.
But now?
Now, I was pulling the entire foundation out from under their perfect little stage. And they wouldn't even see it coming. The hallway was cold when I slipped my phone back into my purse. Not the kind of cold that chills your skin. The kind that seeps into your bones. Quiet, steady, sharpening everything inside you. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply. For the first time all day, I felt like myself again. Not the woman seated behind flowers. Not the afterthought in someone else's masterpiece. Not the inconvenient shadow they shoved into the back row.
No.
I felt like the woman who had survived loss. Survived single motherhood. Survived every hardship thrown at her. I felt awake. The kind of awake that changes everything. I re-entered the hall, unnoticed. Guests laughed, danced, toasted. The bride threw her head back, her pearls catching the light. My son, my heart, hovered at her side, oblivious to the storm already brewing beneath the surface. But there would be time for reckoning. Not tonight.
Not yet.
Tonight I would smile. Tonight I would watch. Tonight, I would let them enjoy the comfort of a world that was already crumbling. Because tomorrow, the calls would roll in. No brunch. No florals. No entertainment. Invoices rerouted. Responsibilities shifted. Tonight, the first domino had fallen. But the biggest ones were still waiting. The wedding ended. I left quietly. No dramatic exit. No confrontation. No scenes. I slipped out into the cool night air, walked to my car, and drove away without looking back. My hotel room felt stale when I entered. The air conditioner rattled. The lamp flickered. The bedspread smelled faintly of bleach. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my dress, and let the silence settle. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from my cousin. Are you okay? That was weird seating. Call me. A message from my neighbor. Saw some photos. Why weren't you in any? And one from my son. Mom, where did you go? I stared at that last message for a long, long time. Where did I go? To the shadows you placed me in. To the back row you shoved me into. To the quiet you expected from me. But I said nothing. Instead, I stood, crossed the room, and stopped in front of the mirror. The face staring back at me didn't look like the woman who raised a child with her bare hands and broken sleep. She looked older, heavier, tired. Not from age. From years of giving and never receiving. I turned away. And that's when I remembered the red folder. The one tucked in the drawer back home. The one my late husband addressed to me, but I never opened. The one I had buried under paperwork, telling myself the past didn't matter. But after tonight, after seeing my son thank another family for being his, the past suddenly mattered more than anything. I packed my bag, checked out, and drove home in the dark, headlights sweeping across empty roads. By the time I reached my house, the sky was beginning to lighten, soft pink bleeding into deep blue. I went straight to the bedroom, opened the drawer, pulled out the red folder. It felt heavier than I remembered. Inside were old insurance papers, medical receipts, a photograph of us from years ago, and at the very bottom, an unopened envelope, yellowed around the edges, addressed in my late husband's handwriting. My breath hitched. Hands trembling, I slid my finger under the flap. The paper inside was thin, fragile, as if the truth itself had aged with it. The letter began, "Margaret, I know this will hurt you, but you deserve the truth." My vision blurred for a second. I blinked it away and forced myself to continue reading. "Daniel is not biologically yours." The world stopped, not slowed, stopped. A ringing filled my ears, drowning out everything else. I kept reading. "When we met, I wasn't honest with you. Daniel wasn't mine either. A young girl left him with me, terrified and unable to raise a child. She asked me to give him a better life. I told you he was ours because I didn't want you to leave. And you loved him anyway." I sank to the edge of the bed. The letter trembled in my hands. My son, my beautiful boy, not mine by blood, never mine biologically. But how many diapers had I changed? How many tears had I wiped? How many nights had I held him through fevers? How many dreams had I nurtured? Motherhood had never been tied to biology for me. I had loved him with a fullness no DNA test could measure. But reading the truth, reopening that wound, realizing the secret my husband had carried, it felt like the universe was slicing open a scar I didn't even know I had. I covered my mouth to keep from crying out, not because he wasn't mine by blood, but because he had let another family step in and erase me, erase the woman who raised him, erase the only mother he had ever truly known, as if biology meant more than years of sacrifice, as if love didn't count unless it was visible. I cried then, not quietly, not politely, but deep, guttural sobs I hadn't released in years. The kind that peels something raw and vulnerable inside you. When the sobs finally faded, the room felt colder, heavier. But the twist wasn't done. Not yet. Hours passed before I remembered the rest of the folder. Thin papers tucked behind a divider. I reached in and pulled out another letter. Not from my husband, but from someone else. A printout of a message. A message I didn't recognize. It was a screenshot from a conversation between Emily and my son. My stomach dropped. The message was dated 6 months before the wedding. I read slowly. "Emily, she's not even your real mother. Why are you letting her make decisions?" My vision blurred. I blinked hard. "Emily, your dad never told her the truth. You don't owe her anything." My breathing hitched. "Emily, honestly, Daniel, if she sits in the front row, it'll ruin the photos. She doesn't fit the aesthetic." Aesthetic. That word again. The venom of it somehow stronger now. There were more messages. "Emily, she acts like you're her whole life. It's suffocating. You need space." "Emily, my parents are your real family now." Real family. My heart twisted. The messages continued. "Daniel, she'll be upset." "Emily, then stop letting her control you. Place her in the back. Place her. Not seat her. Place her. Like furniture. Like a visual prop. Like something to hide." And then the last message. The one that gutted me. "Emily, she's lucky we're even inviting her." Lucky. Lucky? Lucky to attend the wedding I funded? Lucky to watch from behind floral arrangements? Lucky to sit in the shadows at the ceremony of the boy I raised? My hands trembled violently. I gripped the paper until it crumpled. The betrayal cut deeper than the truth about his biology. Because this was intention. Cruelty. Manipulation. And my son had allowed it, not because he didn't know better, but because he believed her. He believed her over the mother who raised him. He chose her narrative over his own memories, over my sacrifices, over my love, over the years I had given him. Something inside me went still, not broken, not shattered.
Still.
The stillness of resolution, of clarity, of finality. My whole life, I had believed love was enough, that motherhood earned respect, that sacrifice guaranteed loyalty. But this was the lesson. Blood doesn't guarantee love. Marriage doesn't guarantee respect. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee gratitude. People choose who they want to honor.
And he did not choose me.
Not anymore. The morning sun spilled through the curtains, warm and golden, painting the room in soft light. But it didn't feel warm. It felt like a spotlight shining on the ruins of a life I had built around someone who had long stopped seeing me. I sat on the edge of the bed, both letters in my lap, and, for the first time in my life, I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because some pains carve so deep they leave no room for tears. They leave only clarity. I folded the letters carefully, placed them back into the red folder, and set it on the kitchen table. A symbol, a truth, a turning point, because now I understood something so clearly, it felt like a revelation. This story was never about losing him. It was about finally finding myself. And they, my son, his wife, her family, had no idea the storm that was coming next. The morning after I read the letters, the world looked different. Not brighter, not softer, not healed,
Just honest.
for the first time in years, I could hear the silence in my own home without feeling lonely. The refrigerator's quiet hum, the ticking wall clock, the whisper of sunlight stretching across my living room floor. My hands rested on my lap, steady, steady in a way they hadn't been at the wedding. Steady in a way grief usually doesn't allow. But this wasn't grief. This was rebirth. I stood from the table, the red folder still open behind me, and walked to the bathroom mirror. The woman who stared back at me looked older than she felt and younger than she'd been the night before. Something had lifted. Something had settled. Something had changed. My reflection wasn't framed by humiliation anymore. It wasn't bent under the weight of unanswered sacrifices. It wasn't defined by a son who stopped choosing me. It was mine. I washed my face slowly, deliberately. The cool water shocked my skin awake. I brushed my hair gently, smoothing away the crinkles left from the pillow. I moisturized my cheeks, massaged my temples, let my fingers get reacquainted with a face that hadn't been cared for in a long time. Not the mother, not the provider, not the background character, just me. The house was quiet, almost reverent, as if it were holding its breath. Usually, after heavy moments, I cleaned,
Scrubbed. Organized.
busy fingers made a busy mind. Not today. Today I moved with intention. I opened my closet and scanned the clothes hanging like memories. Blouses worn to parent-teacher meetings. Sweaters stretched from years of overuse. Dresses bought for events where I was never in the photos. I slid my fingers across hangers and realized something startling. I didn't know my favorite color anymore, or my favorite fragrance, or the last book I read for pleasure, or the last meal I cooked just for myself. Because my whole life had been about being something for someone else. Mother,
Wife.
provider, support system, invisible backbone. But who was I without roles? Who was I without giving? That question didn't scare me. It freed me. I pulled out a simple, comfortable outfit, one I loved but hadn't worn because it felt too casual for the countless obligations I carried. Today, I dressed for me.
Jeans.
A soft cotton shirt. A sweater that smelled faintly of lavender detergent. I stepped outside. The air was crisp, cool, lightly scented with morning dew and the roses I planted years ago. My roses. I walked down the street slowly, savoring each breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't running late. I wasn't exhausted. I was present. I stopped at the cafe on the corner. The barista, a girl with freckles and a tired smile, looked up. "Good morning. What can I get for you?" I almost said the usual. But I didn't have a usual.
Not really.
I always ordered whatever was cheapest. Whatever fit the tight budget I stretched to raise my son. Whatever was fine enough.
Today I paused.
"What do I want?" I whispered, mostly to myself. The barista tilted her head. "Try the honey lavender latte," she suggested. "It's gentle, comforting." For once, I didn't consider the price. "I'll take it," I said. One small choice. But it felt monumental. I sat by the window, holding the warm cup, letting the steam kiss my face. The flavor was soft, floral, sweet, but not too sweet. It felt like sitting under a blanket someone tucked around me with care. Care for myself. When I got home, I opened the box of old photos. Ones I kept because they held memories I thought defined me. Pictures of my son's birthdays, graduations, holidays. Pictures of me holding him, supporting him, celebrating him. But something stood out. I wasn't in most of the photos. I was always behind the camera, capturing everyone else's moments, documenting their joy, making sure they had proof of being loved. But where was my joy? Where was my proof? Carefully, lovingly, I selected the photos that mattered. The ones where I was smiling. The ones where I wasn't just a caretaker, but a person. I placed 3 of them on the mantle. Not many. Just enough. Enough to remind myself I had a life outside the heartbreak. 2 days later, I did something radical. I invited people to dinner. Not out of obligation. Not out of tradition. Not because of holidays or social pressures. But because there were people who loved me quietly, kindly,
Genuinely.
neighbors who shoveled my driveway when I overslept, a coworker who brought me soup when I fell ill, a friend from the bookstore who always remembered my name, people who never asked me for anything, people who didn't drain me, people who made me feel seen. I cleaned my home, not out of shame, but out of pride. I cooked a meal, not for others, but for us. I lit candles, not for ambience, but for warmth. They arrived one by one, each carrying something small.
Bread. Wine.
Flowers. But more than that, they brought laughter, stories, lightness. My living room filled with voices and joy in a way it hadn't in years. I wasn't performing. I wasn't hosting out of duty. I wasn't overshadowed. I was part of the table, part of the conversation,
Part of the moment.
Near the end of the night, Claire, my friend from the ER days, raised her glass. To Margaret, she said softly, for remembering what so many of us forget, that a life you build for yourself is the one that lasts. Everyone clinked glasses, and for the first time, I felt something inside me soften, not break, bloom. After everyone left, I stood in my kitchen barefoot, listening to the soft echo of laughter still clinging to the air. I washed the dishes slowly, put leftovers away, blew out the candles one by one. And then I sat at the table. My table. The same table where I once paid bills in tears. Where I filled out permission slips. Where I planned meals I never got to enjoy. Where I balanced a house on a shoestring budget. Tonight, it wasn't heavy. Tonight, it wasn't lonely. Tonight, it held only one thing.
Peace.
A peace earned through years of silence. A peace built through sacrifice. A peace reclaimed after loss. I placed my hand on the wood and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I whispered, I'm doing this for me. No guilt. No fear. No apology. Just me. Becoming again. Blooming again. Living again. And deep down, I knew this rebirth wasn't an ending. It was preparation for the conversation that was coming next, the one that would change everything. Because soon, he would knock on my door, and I would be ready. 3 days passed after the wedding. 3 days of silence. 3 days of invoices piling into the bride's family's inbox. 3 days of brunch cancellations, vendor confusion, and spiraling chaos. But more importantly, 3 days of me learning how to breathe again. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't refreshing my phone. I was peaceful. I spent the time tending to my garden, sipping warm tea near the window, reading old books whose pages smelled like dust and memories. I let sunlight warm my skin. I cooked meals with spices I loved but rarely used. I let myself take up space. My home felt different now. Lighter, as if the walls themselves had sighed in relief, finally able to hold me, and not the weight of everyone I had carried for years. I had almost forgotten about the wedding fallout. Almost, when the knock finally came.
Sharp. Fast.
Desperate. I didn't rush to answer it. I finished pouring my tea, set the spoon down gently, wiped my hands on a soft towel. Then I walked slowly to the door. When I opened it, my son stood on the other side, eyes swollen, tie loosened, hair tousled like he had been dragging his hands through it for hours. He looked nothing like the glowing groom from the wedding photos. He looked undone.
Mom.
His voice cracked on the word. For a moment, his eyes searched mine, like he was hoping I would reach out, pull him inside, hold him like I used to when storms scared him. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I stepped aside politely. Come in. He walked in, looking around the house as if seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. He sat on the couch. His hands shook slightly. I sat across from him, back straight, hands folded calmly on my lap. He was the first to break the silence. Why did you do it? His voice was hoarse. Why did you cancel everything? The brunch, the extras, the everything. Do you have any idea what that caused? I tilted my head slightly. Do you have any idea what you caused? His mouth snapped shut. For the first time in his life, he had no immediate answer. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it sit. Heavy. Honest. He swallowed hard. Emily's parents are furious. The vendors are demanding payment. I raised a hand slightly, and he stopped mid-sentence. Before we talk about cancellations, I said softly, let's talk about the placement. He blinked. Confused. Uncomfortable. The placement, he echoed. Yes, I answered. My seat. The one behind the flowers. The one with the sticky note. The one where your wife said I would ruin the aesthetic. His jaw tensed. Mom, Emily just wanted the photos to be aesthetic. I finished for him. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at his hands. Why didn't you defend me? My voice didn't rise. It didn't break. It simply existed. Quiet, steady, undeniable. He inhaled shakily. It wasn't like that. But it was, I said gently. You knew where I was seated. You knew I wasn't acknowledged. You knew the speeches erased me. You saw it. You let it happen. His shoulders sagged. I didn't want to upset Emily on the wedding day. And upsetting me didn't matter. His silence was all the answer I needed. I stood and walked to the kitchen table, returning with the red folder. When I set it down in front of him, he looked confused. What's that? The truth, I said. He hesitated before opening it.
He saw the handwriting.
His father's. He frowned and unfolded the first letter. As he read, his face drained of color. His mouth parted. His eyes widened. His breathing hitched. When he reached the line, Daniel is not biologically yours. He looked up at me sharply. Mom. I held up a hand. Keep reading.
He did.
And with each sentence, his expression shifted. From shock, to disbelief, to devastation, to something deeper.
Guilt.
Deep, heavy, bone-sinking guilt. When he finished, he pressed the back of his hand to his mouth. He looked like a child again.
Small. Lost.
Why didn't you tell me? Because it didn't matter, I said softly. I loved you long before biology ever could, and long after it didn't. His lower lip trembled. But Emily said she told me. I slid the second page toward him. The screenshots. His eyes moved quickly, and each message hit him like a physical blow. When he reached the final line, she's lucky we're even inviting her. He dropped the paper. Tears streamed down his face. Mom, I didn't think she. I didn't. He broke off, sobbing into his hands. I watched him, not coldly, not cruelly, but with a heart that finally understood. This wasn't about losing him. It was about letting go of a version of him that never saw me. After several minutes, he looked up, eyes red, face blotched. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I let her twist everything. I let her talk about you like you weren't, like you hadn't. Mom, I'm so sorry." I inhaled slowly. "I'm not angry," I said. He closed his eyes in relief. "I'm done." His relief evaporated. "Mom, you once said I was your whole world." I continued softly. "Maybe I was.
But now,
I met his eyes.
now,
I'm finally mine." His face crumpled. "No, Mom, please. Don't say that. I need you." "I didn't mean." "But you did," I said, still calm. "And I won't spend the rest of my life fighting for a front row seat in someone else's story. Not yours. Not hers. Not anyone's." He choked back a sob. "I can fix this. I'll talk to Emily." "No," I said gently. "You need to fix yourself. Your marriage. Your priorities. Your boundaries. Your integrity." I slid the folder toward him. "These truths belong to you now, not me." He hesitated before taking it. Then I stood, walked him to the door, opened it. He lingered there, shattered. "Mom, will you forgive me?" I looked at him, truly looked at him, and said, "I already have. But forgiveness doesn't mean access." His breath caught. I leaned in, kissed his forehead softly, like I used to when he was little. Then I stepped back. "Goodbye, Daniel." His eyes filled again. "Goodbye, Mom." And then, because some doors need to close for new lives to begin, I gently shut the door. Not in anger, not in spite, but in peace. In choosing myself. In stepping into a future not defined by pain. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything I had never given myself permission to feel. Full of everything I was becoming. Full of the beginning of a life that finally belonged to me. The house was quiet again. Not the suffocating quiet that once pressed on my chest, but a peaceful quiet. A warm quiet. The kind that wraps itself around your shoulders like a soft shawl and whispers, "You're safe now." The evening sun filtered through the window, casting honey gold light across my dining table. The same table where I had paid bills, worried about deadlines, planned my son's birthdays, cried into my hands, and rebuilt myself piece by piece. Tonight it held only simple things. A cup of herbal tea. A half-opened book. A single sunflower in a glass vase. The sunflower leaned slightly toward the light, its petals glowing like little flames. I didn't choose it for its beauty. I chose it because sunflowers turn toward the sun, and for so many years, I had been turning only toward other people's needs, other people's expectations, other people's happiness, never my own.
but now,
Now the world was different. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around my warm cup, my breathing steady.
slow,
Unhurried. Outside, my garden rustled gently in the evening breeze. Inside, my home felt like mine again. Not a staging ground for sacrifices. Not a battleground of silent hurts. Not a shrine to a past that no longer fit. It felt like a beginning. A soft, quiet, powerful beginning. I glanced at the sunflower again, the golden petals glowing in the fading light, and a slow smile curved across my lips. And as the light settled across my table, I whispered to myself, I finally realized I never needed a front row in anyone's life. I just needed one in my own. The sun dipped lower, the glow deepened, and in that warm, golden silence, I knew I was home.